more in mortgage-backed paper, as much as they borrowed in the previous 60 or sold in the previous 62 years. We got the bill passed on a straight party line vote in July of 2005 through the Senate Finance Committee. Not a single Democrat supported subjecting Fannie and Freddie, the two biggest financial institutions in America, to the same kind of scrutiny that we give banks, savings and loans, and credit unions. And the Democrat ranking member of the committee, Chris Dodd, went to Richard Shelby and said, you bring this bill up to the floor of the Senate, and I have a letter signed by every Democrat, including Barack Obama, the new senator from Illinois, promising to filibuster it. In the intervening the next 3 years, they went out and bought $1.4 trillion more. By the summer of 2008, these firms were leveraged 70 to 1, meaning a 1.3% decline in the underlying value of their assets. Home mortgages wiped them out. And guess what? Home mortgages declined more than 1.3%, and they got wiped out. It was the refusal of Democrats to subject Fannie and Freddie to the same kind of sensible regulation that we give banks, savings loans, and credit unions that was the accelerant that turned a minor downturn in the business cycle into a worldwide crisis. It was the absence of regulation, and it was Democrats who fought us tooth and nail for 8 years and finally voted for it in the summer of 2008.
Absence of regulation is sort of synonymous with the Bush administration. You just saw the report out the other day. You saw in 2005, Dick Cheney pushed that the mineral management system, which is in charge of all this oil drilling, that it used to be the government was in charge of environmental standards, procedural, and how the mechanics are done. They changed the law so that it was now done by the private sector so they could sort of govern themselves, which was a huge mistake. I think we'll find out BP, they've cut a lot of corners. They were spending a lot of money on this well. They were tired of it. They didn't do the 3 casings of cement they should have done. They put up $20 billion yesterday. I think that's just the beginning. But listen, what you don't want to do, too, in a crisis is throw out the baby with the dishwater and have too much regulation. Because we can over-regulate. What we cannot do is stifle economic activity in this country. We have got to get money out to the people who have the credit worthiness who are going to grow our economy. And until we do that, this economy is not going to grow. We also have to come up with new ideas, new developments. Look at China today. They're spending billions of dollars on green energy, solar, wind. They've purchased $900 billion of our securities. China has become our banker. You say get tough on China, it's hard to do that when they're buying all of our securities.
A rare moment of agreement. We do need to do things that spur economic growth. The choice is, though, do we want you to be in charge of that, or do we want the government to be in charge of that? I want you to be in charge of that. I want risk takers and entrepreneurs to be the people in charge, not the government making these decisions. Let me mention this side swipe on MMS. If this Minerals and Management Service was such a disaster, and everybody knew it was cutting corners, then why didn't President Obama in 17 months in office solve it? In fact, remember, this particular well, the Deep Horizon well, was fast-tracked and approved by Obama appointees in the MMS last summer. We're not going through all of the necessary environmental reviews and cut corners. It was this administration that fast-tracked this. So if there was a problem there, again, it goes back to my point. He is the president. He puts people in charge. If it's an obvious problem and the agency is troubled and everybody knows it's a problem, then why don't you fix it? And then, if it is a problem, why do you fast-track this particular well and then turn around and try and blame others for it?
Let me follow up on that, Karl. Sarah Palin, Governor Jindal of Louisiana, Governor Barber of Mississippi, 2 Republicans, have made a career of blaming Washington for their problems. And yet, the instant this well blew, what did all 3 of them say? Where's Washington? Isn't there a lot of hypocrisy here about the whole question of Washington's role in a lot of these issues?
Steve, let's be clear. In a natural disaster like Hurricane Katrina roars across Mississippi, the guy in charge is the governor of the state. That's under the laws of the United States. A law passed in 1988 called the Stafford Act says in the case of a natural disaster in the continental United States, the person in charge is the state, and the responsibility of the federal government is to provide whatever assistance the governor asks for and write big checks. In the case of an oil spill on the outer continental shelf, it is governed by the Oil Liability Act, the Oil Spill Liability Act, and preceding statutes, all of which say that in an incident like this, the person in charge is the President of the United States, who must designate the people to be in charge. My comment about the President is, look, I think the President should have gone at the very beginning and said, look, the only way to solve this, the only way, look, my dad was a hard rock geologist. He went to the Colorado School of Mines. He wasn't a petroleum guy, but he was in the business. the only way to stop this leak that's guaranteed to work at these depths, 5,000 feet under the surface of the water, are relief wells. He should have gone out early and said, this is going to be a thorny problem. The company is going to begin to drill 2 wells immediately. And what we're going to do then is work with them side by side to do everything possible to try and find a way to solve this. But the American people need to prepare themselves for the fact this may take us 3 months. And instead, it took him 12 days to go to the region. He was late in improving the magnitude. I listened to that speech the other night. It was disingenuous. You look at paragraph 2 and paragraph 3. In paragraph 2, he says, within days after the rig being blown up, I assembled a group of our scientists and engineers working under our Nobel Prize-winning Secretary of Energy, Chu, and they have been working on this. And we have directed the company to speed up the technology and material that they're putting to solve this problem, to get more of the oil out, leaving the impression that this happened back then. No, they told the company this week their first explicit instructions like that. What he was referring to was an order they gave him on Monday to speed up, shorten the amount of time that it would take them to get more capacity to skim the oil off of that device that they got down there. So look, the president's blown this, but he's the guy in charge. So you bet the governors are the people. When Bobby Jindal goes to the President of the United States on the 11th of May and says, let us build 24 berm islands, temporary dredge islands, to keep the oil from coming into our coastal waters and coming into these fragile wetlands, and it takes 17 days for the administration to come back and say, you can't have 24, you get 6, and you have to pay for 5 of them. That's unacceptable. That's simply unacceptable.
I mean, coming from the man, part of the Bush administration with Katrina, that was the end of the Bush administration. George Bush is out at some birthday party, I think in Arizona, then flies over and he looks out the window of Air Force One, and that was his compassion, is these people in the Astrodome, they couldn't even get water. Forget about the laws. At the end of the day, when you have a catastrophe, the President of the United States is responsible. And that was a gigantic failure under Hurricane Katrina.